Hi, this is Jim Janossy. This is the first of a series of lectures put up as lecture slides that I'm doing for GPH 205. In this lecture, we're going to take a look at both the preface and the introduction to The Story of Art by Ernst Gombrich. I think I'm going to change the color of my pen here to red to make this a little nicer. Here are four very important concepts that I want you to keep in mind as we go through all the chapters of the Gombrich textbook. These four concepts are very important. First of all, we're going to look at the dimensions of visual technologies in this way. We're going to be seeking to understand the purpose of art within a civilization. We're going to take a look at various physical means that art, that is, objects that we consider art today that might have been serving a very utilitarian purpose within that civilization, the physical means by which these are created. And there's many, many means. Pigments on various kinds of substances like canvas or wood, wax, which is a technique called encaustic, dyes on cloth, sculpting material like stone, carving wood, printing. We'll take a look at all of these in passing to see how various civilizations have used these mediums to create visual technologies on into the present day when we use computers to do this. We're going to take a look at the rules, that is, the guiding principles. And this is very much related to the purpose of art, because the purpose defines what the rules that the civilization applies to art. Lastly, we're going to look at the status of the people within the society creating art. In earlier societies, people might be considered workmen, simply to recreate the kinds of objects that people before them had created, not as intellectuals. Nowadays, we tend to view artists as visual poets, expressing something that perhaps couldn't be expressed any other way. That's changed over time in various societies. What Gombrich makes a point of in this introduction is that we can't judge the goodness or the validity of art based on how we might like the subject matter, a cute child in this case, or in this case kind of a realistic looking elderly woman. This by Peter Paul Rubens is a chalk drawing of his child, a cherubic little kid, and you'll notice how much depth Rubens can bring out just by using the shading of chalk. Dürer was an engraver and also an artist in other mediums. This is his mother at an elderly age, and it's quite realistic. It actually portrays a lot of her character. It's a charcoal drawing similar in nature to this, but it would be incorrect to say that one or the other is better. You might like one or the other more than the other, but that doesn't necessarily mean that either or both of them are something that wouldn't be considered valid as an expression of art. Here we have two other examples, one of Dürer. This is a watercolor of extreme detail. Each individual hair of this rabbit seems to have been painted. It's almost photographic in nature. This was painted in 1503, quite a number of years ago. Dürer was very great on trying to achieve detail in his art. But because of that detail, it wouldn't be correct to say that this is better than this drawing by Rembrandt. What Rembrandt's done here with a chalk drawing is to very vividly portray the texture of an elephant's skin. And this is not nearly as detailed as this painting, but it would be incorrect to say one is better than the other simply based on detail. Here is another illustration by Gombrich. Sometimes paintings like this one by Jericho, which were thought to be exactly as they should have been to depict galloping horses, were later proved to be absolutely incorrect when the camera was developed, and Edward Muybridge took this series of pictures to basically see if at any point all four legs of a horse were off the ground. But you do notice that in galloping, and at no point is the horse in this position with the front legs forward and the back legs back. So what one age determines to be the correct way to represent something may not in fact be the correct way when technology advances. So we can't say this is right and some other depiction done earlier would be wrong on that basis. And here we have an example of how society defines what it expects of visual representation. Both these are by Caravaggio, a very famous artist of the early 1600s. This piece of artwork, which was commissioned by a church, is Caravaggio's interpretation of the the Gospel of Matthew being written by the Apostle Matthew right here. And it wasn't done in black and white. This painting was destroyed in the Second World War. It was hanging in a museum in Berlin, which was bombed. This painting was rejected by the church that commissioned it because they thought it didn't show the saint in as dignified a manner as they had come to expect a saint would be painted. Here the saint is dressed up in common clothes and barefoot, and his hand is being guided by an angel, with the angel touching it, almost like you would guide the hand of a child. For this reason, they said this was not acceptable to decorate a church. Instead, the common fashion for depicting a saint was in this rather noble way, with finer clothes, and receiving perhaps some guidance from an angel, but not in this kind of a childish way of guiding your hand. We would regard both of these pieces of art as very much of an accomplishment and great art by an artist who's well renowned. But in his day, this type of art was not acceptable simply because of the way he interpreted the biblical scripture behind this. And finally, another example that Gombrich gives is this painting by Raphael, which unfortunately is a little bit distorted here in my presentation of it. I didn't scan this, I took a picture of it, and that's a bit distorted. But I think you get the impression here that the artist was conveying this ease with which this positioning of John the Baptist and Jesus, who were actually cousins, how they relate to one another and the position in which they're standing and the way the mom is looking down, the Virgin Mary here. It looks very much at ease, very much the way that you might picture this sort of a scene occurring. But what Gombrich points out is we do have a lot of these sketches and studies that Raphael had done prior to painting the painting in this way. And you see he tried out a number of different ways, positioning of the children in this scene, in order to get the effect that he was after. So to make something look at ease and natural is not necessarily an easy process. It's a mark of the artist that he can cast about and understand all these different interpretations and then choose one which actually is pleasing. Now, Gombrich has a few other examples in this chapter, but I'm not going to cover every example. I'm hitting the highlights in these slides. You are expected to read the entire chapters, or in this case the preface and the introduction, and bring insights from that into the exercises and into your responses. I'm simply trying to hit the major points to help you derive what the understanding of these readings should be. And that's the end of the slides that I'll present for the preface and the intro.